Hey Dragonlings, welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, my name is Skye. I'm a fantasy author who writes primarily paranormal romance under the name SD Hegyes. In today's video, I wanted to talk about character names, both finding them and how I choose them, because in my case, it's a little bit of a different process for both. But we'll get into that. Character names are something I hear a lot of writers struggle with, whether it's finding them, choosing them, where to get them, what they mean, everything in between. And I used to struggle with this as well. However, I've started implementing ways of finding names and then choosing names. Again, it's separate. We'll get into that. But implementing this strategy has helped me in a way that I no longer struggle to try to find character names, no matter what I'm doing. So let's talk about how I find character names. I use a multiple set of resources in order to pick a bunch of character names that I like, and then I will use a different strategy in order to pick the final name that I'm going to use for most of my characters. There are some exceptions, but for the most part, this is exactly how I do it. One resource that I use for finding character names is baby name books. Now, this can get me in a lot of trouble. It has in the past because I keep a baby name book on my shelf, and I've had multiple people who don't know I'm an author ask me, "Oh, what did you do?" Because I'm a female, which means if I have a baby name book, I must be pregnant. Sucks. But I digress. The book I have is the complete book of baby names. This is by Lesley Bolton. It was published originally in 2006. I actually got a copy of this when I was working at a used bookstore. Both my girls had already been born by the time I got this book, but it was still really interesting to look in here and find variations of both their names, and it turned out we used alternate spellings. This particular book has various lists of popular names based on what they mean, when they were popular. It also contains a complete list of names with their origin, their definition, and alternate spellings. Both my girls, like I said, are listed in here, which is really interesting, but both of them are listed as alternate spellings of the original name. Gracelyn is an alternate spelling of Grace, and Gwendolyn, the way we have it spelled, is an alternate spelling of Gwendolyn. If you don't like that book, though, there are plenty of other baby name books. I'm actually interested in finding a newer version of a baby name book, just because it'd be interesting to see what kind of names have been updated, if there's been any new names added to it. There's been a lot of new names thanks to pulp culture and TV shows that have been added to baby name lists online. So it'd be really interesting to see what you can find in newer versions of baby name books. If you do not have the option of going out and purchasing a baby name book, that is fine. There are a ton of websites online that allow you to go over and pick baby names as well. If you just Google baby names or even name generators, there is an endless amount of options to choose from in order to find baby names. I personally use two websites when I'm looking for names online. I use Behind the Name and I use Fantasy Name Generators. These two are the most popular for me in order to find names that I'm interested in. And I'm going to be looking at both websites on my phone, but I'll have a screenshot here that allows you to see what I am looking at as I'm scrolling through and talking about what I love about both of these sites. With Behind the Name, it has the option to choose names based on what letter they start with, whether they're masculine or feminine names, if you're looking for a specific type of name, whether it's an English name, mythological name, Irish name, African names, biblical names. There are a ton of choices as far as the types of names you're looking for. On the main page of the website, there is a name of the day, depending on what day you're looking at the website. I enjoy reading all those names. I find it really fascinating how they pick the name and what names they end up showcasing. There is a list of popular names with a drop-down menu that allows you to choose from various places. So like, say I wanted to see the popular names from Spain, it would generate the 10 most popular masculine and feminine names from Spain. And you have the option of finding more popular names when you click the More button. Down at the bottom of the homepage, it has message boards, a random name generator where you roll a dice. It looks like most common names and surnames. The surnames one is definitely the most interesting to me with Behind the Name, because with a baby name book, it doesn't have surnames listed because it believes that you are just looking for a baby name to name your child that you are pregnant with or have just had. So there aren't surnames listed in most baby name books. I'm actually interested one day if they finally ever make a baby name book that contains surnames or a list book of surnames, because I think that would be really fascinating. If you know of one, let me know, because if they have like a complete book of surnames, kind of like they have this complete book of baby names, I would totally buy it. I'm just saying. Skipping over to the other website that I really enjoy using, which is the Fantasy Name Generator. I'm looking at the mobile version, and on the mobile version, it allows you to pick names based on fantasy and folklore, real names. You can also pick names for places and location, other kinds of names, whether something is from pop culture or a description generator, and there's other kinds of generators on this website. This is an overall website. It's not just for naming characters. It's for a little bit of everything. And that's why it's one of the ones I actually use the most. Clicking under the fantasy and folklore, you can pick what kind of name you're looking for. This list is extremely long depending on what you are looking for. So say I have a fairy that I'm trying to name, I can click on fairy names and it comes up with a generated list, and you can choose, whoops, I made it mad. Let's go back to that. Fairy, I can't spell fairy. It has the option of choosing whether you're looking for male names or female names. And when you click on it, it generates a list of 10 names, I believe. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 names that are masculine. And if I click female names, it will generate a whole new list that are feminine. Going to the mobile version, first of all, because I'm using the mobile version. And if I click on real names, I can click on Anglo-Saxon names. And it gives a short description of what the origin is. The Anglo-Saxons were Germanic tribes who first lived in Germany as Saxons, but later migrated and reached Britain. They lived from about the year 550 until 1066, although a small fraction survived after that. And it includes a little bit of description about what the purpose of the names were, how they named their children, and so on and so forth, which I've always found a little bit fascinating. But again, the same option. If I click male names, I get a list of 10 male names. And if I click female names, I get a list of 10 female names, which I thoroughly enjoy. The other option that you have as far as finding names is name generator apps. There are two that I particularly use, one more so than the other. But again, I'm going to show a screenshot here of what I'm looking at, and I'm going to take a look at my phone and mess with them as well. So the first one is just called Name Generator. I will have links to everything in the description below. And as you can see from over here, you are allowed to pick the name origin. Like the websites, it has a long list of possibilities that you can choose as far as origins go. And I actually 90% of the time just choose American. Nope, it's not Armenian. American, because most of my stories take place in America. I know that sounds really dumb, but that's what I do. I'm sorry. But from there, you can click male or female. In this case, I clicked male, and the name it suggested was Trenton Braun, whereas if I click on female, it chose Michaela Peck. And that's part of the reason I choose American, is because since American names are just a potluck of various other cultures all mixed into one, I get a nice blend of various origins, so that when I look up the meaning of names, I will find that some of the names are African or Anglo-Saxon or English or Germanic or other origins entirely. It varies. I've had Spanish names come up. I've had British names come up, Welsh. It's very rare. Sometimes I have to be a little bit more specific as far as the cultures go, but most of the time it is very well varied as far as the names go for the American choice. That being said, if I wanted something that was of a specific culture, say I wanted a German name, I just click on the drop-down menu, choose German, click with male if I want a male name, or click female if I want a female name. The other name generator I use is called a fantasy name generator, and it has a very similar premise. When we're looking at the screen, it has options at the top for fantasy, animal, planet, plant, star, orc, dwarf, elf, troll, dragon, and human. And when I click on human, it automatically has a list of names generated that I can just scroll through in order to pick one I like. Whereas if I pick elf, same thing. It's already got a list that's been generated for me that I can just scroll through and pick one I like. And in order to generate more or brand new names, all I have to do is scroll up, it refreshes the page, regenerates a new list, and we can continue on. I believe both of these name generator apps are free, but I will include links in the description below. And if they aren't free, feel free to let me know. But I'm pretty certain I have free versions of both apps. If I don't, I purchased them so long ago, I couldn't even begin to tell you the price. So I apologize for that ahead of time. Another way to get names is just from books and movies that you really enjoy. I have gotten plenty of names this way. My main character in the Damned and Dangerous Quartet is Sorsha, and I even include it in the text that her name is pulled directly from the movie Willow. The princess in Willow from the Evil Queen is Sorsha, and it's spelled the exact same way. I specifically went and looked and saw how it was spelled. In fact, that's why when I look up Sorsha in this baby name book, it's not listed as the spelling I have it as, because it's spelled differently. But the best way to do this is not just from the characters. In fact, 90% of the time, especially if a movie is based on a book, I don't recommend choosing names of characters that are the characters from the movies and books. When you're watching a movie, wait until you get to the end credits. There are a ton of people who help in the making of movies. And when you watch the end credits, you will never be free of a bunch of names for every single movie. And I'm not going to lie, that's where I've gotten a ton of names from, both first names and surnames, which I think is the most particular thing that a lot of people have trouble with. Movies and books are a great way to find character names, and it's actually one of my favorite ways to find character names when I'm on the hunt for them. Another way to find names is just to ask your family and friends. I see this on live streams all the time where people are like, I can't think of a name for this character. Can you guys give me some name suggestions? This is what they're like. And people roll with it. It is amazing how often you can find not just one good name, but a bunch of good names that even if you're not going to use the one right now, you like it enough to hold on to it to use at a later date. And I have definitely named some character names this way. You can even name them after your friends and family. Going the same way, you have to be careful with this so that they don't come at you like, hey, this character's named after me, and I don't act like that. There is a fine line, but I know I personally, when I hit certain milestones, I'm like, I put up an announcement like, hey, have a character named after you. Most likely they're going to be a bad guy, and they will not be you in the sense that they act the way you do. They're just going to be named after you. And I actually, when I hit certain milestones, I put up announcements like that, and I can't wait till I hit the next milestone and do that again, because it is so much fun to have to name characters after people. And let's face it, I go giddy every time I see a character who's named the same thing I am, because for the longest time, I didn't know anyone with the name of Skye, Skye. So I go giddy whenever I see a character name that's the same as mine. I'm not gonna lie. I don't care if they're anything like me. It's just, So if you see me hit certain milestones, be prepared. That's probably exactly what I'm going to do. I am going to post another announcement being like, hey, have a character named after you, and just have some fun with it because I love it so much. Yes, let's do this. The last and final way I can think of in order to find character names is by using yearbooks. I realize not everyone has yearbooks, but this is something for you to do if you do have a yearbook. I have 4 yearbooks at the moment. I'm missing one of my high school ones, and we have 2 copies of the same year because my husband and I went to the same school and we both had yearbooks. Funny enough, we have 2 copies of 2 years each, and we're both missing the 1 year, and then I have my graduating year. But we had yearbooks even in elementary school, at least I did. So I have my 1998 to 1999 yearbook that I can use. This little thin thing. Yeah, that's a thing. So I have this yearbook I can choose names from. And then technically I have 3, but this is the one I'm showcasing you guys. I have this yearbook, which I can choose from. This was my graduating yearbook, 2008. And yeah, there's so many name options just from yearbooks. It's not even funny. I almost never look at my graduating class for names, but I look at the other classes. So like 2008 was my class. I look at 2007, 2006, and 2004. No, that's not right. 9, 10, and 11, because that's when they would be graduating. So I look at those graduating classes more for names than my own graduating class. But there's no reason why, again, you can't look at your own graduating class for like surnames or even names and then just spell them differently. It's an option. But now you've gotten a whole bunch of names. You have a list on paper of names you like. How are you going to pick just one name? For this, we're going to go ahead and take a look at my computer because I do have a specific way I keep a record of names I like and then choose the names that I want to use. This is something I've only been implementing recently, so it's not very used. I think that's the word I'm looking for. But let's go ahead and take a look at my screen and you'll see what I mean as we're looking at it. So here we are looking at my desktop screen. I use Microsoft Excel to collect all of my names that I like. You can use whatever program you want. You can even use Google Sheets, I believe it's called. I think Sheets is the equivalent to Excel. But I have Excel on both my computers, so that's what I generally use. I have different tabs set up for my collection of names. I have a tab for male first names. I have a tab for female first names. And I have 2 tabs each for surnames. And that's literally because I was lazy and didn't want to go find more dice to use. So I separated it into 2 lists instead of having it as one bigger list. It also makes it easier to see since I do most of my writing on a smaller screen. It makes it easier to see all the names on the list if they are, not as many names on the list. So clicking back on my male first names, I use dice in order to choose my names. The particular dice you see in this screenshot are my Cthulhu dice. These are really hard for me to read when role-playing. These are a set of polyhedral dice, but as I said, it's really hard for me to read these while we're in-game and everything's moving quickly, but they are perfect when I'm writing and I can sit there and stare at them and go, is this a 6 or is this a 9? So that's what I use these for the most, and I really like these dice, and they get a lot of use these days with this way of choosing names. So I have this separated in that I have columns at the top for numbers 1 through 10, and then columns on the left-hand side of 1 through 20. And all of this means is it tells me which dice I'm going to be using. And the first dice will be a D10, which tells me which column I'm picking a name from. And then my secondary dice is a D20, which tells me exactly which name I am picking. And the simple way I do this is I roll both dice at the same time. This was part of the reason that I separated the surnames into 2 lists, so I wouldn't have to go hunting down another D20, and I could just continue doing just the D10 and D20. But now I add another dice in, and I will get into that. But when I roll these dice, you can see I roll a 4 and a 19. So that means I'm picking a name from the 4th column, and I'm picking name number 19. So I'm going to be picking Liam. And what happens is after I use a name, I highlight it in yellow. You can choose any color you want. Yellow is just usually the first option, so that's what I go with. And that means that I won't ever use that name again. I don't particularly like having different characters in different stories with the same name, especially with main characters, but also with side characters. I particularly don't like using the same name multiple times. So when it's highlighted, that means I can't use that name again. We'll do this again with the female names, and I'll roll dice again. This time I rolled 8 and 8, so that means I'm using the 8th column and the 8th name, which means Jamie is our pick of the day, and I will never use Jamie again beyond this particular character. Now the differences come when I pick a surname. Because of the fact that I have multiple lists for surnames, what I generally do is I roll a d6 and I choose odds will mean that I pick a name from list A. Evens means I will pick a name from list B. And what I do is I roll this dice. In this case, I rolled a 4, which means I am picking from column B. And then I roll again my d10 and my d20. And I see that I'm going to be picking column 9 and name 12. So I'm going to be calling this character, I believe this is pronounced Pacheco. Correct me if I'm wrong if you do know how to pronounce this, but in my mind it's Pacheco. So that's the name of our character. So maybe this was a pair of siblings and we have Liam and Jamie Pacheco. And that's it. That's how I pick my names. What I usually generally do is once a character's name has been used, of course I say I can't use it again. When this list is 50 to 75% completed, meaning that 50 to 75% of the names are in yellow, what I might do, I haven't reached this point yet, so I'm not positive what I'm going to do, but what I might do is create another sheet or another tab where I include all of the names that I have used before, and I'll do something similar to what I've done here on the first sheet. So as I'm adding names to this sheet, basically what happens is if I add a name that's already listed, it will highlight it in red telling me that name is already here, and that makes sure that I don't have the same name listed more than once. Or in this case, like you see Brendan and Brandon right next to each other. If they're different spellings of the same name, this is not the same name, but you get my point. If it's different spellings of the same name, it doesn't count it the same way. It only counts it if it is the same name with the same spelling. So I might use Alex and I might use Alexander. And as long as I'm not using the same name, it won't count it. And what I might do in the future is as this gets more full, I'll create that new sheet and I'll make sure that anytime I delete this list and add more names, it highlights anything in red that I've already used before. I'm not certain how I'm going to do that, but it is an option for me in the future. So that's all I have for you guys today. How do you choose names? Do you have a different way than I do? Did anything I mentioned strike a chord with you and is something you are willing to try in the future? Let me know in the comments below. In the meantime, that's all I have for you guys today. Hit that like button if you like this video, or you can thumbs it down if you didn't like it. I'm okay with that. Subscribe to my channel if you want to see more content from me. I post videos on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Tuesdays are vlogs. Thursdays are videos like this one. And I will see you guys all in my next video. Bye, Dragonlings. What is she meowing at? I have to keep pausing my filming because the cats keep meowing at the door to go in or out. Usually I just leave the door open during the day because of the fact that they go in and out so often. And the only reason I'm not doing that today is because of how windy it is. It is super windy. But yeah, it's also super annoying.